everybody? It's Pete Blower with Corrections Unfiltered. I'm sitting here with the one, the only, Chris McConnell. And what I really am glad about is that Chris and we worked together at a facility. And I was always in admiration of Chris's ability to manage inmates, difficult, challenging situations. He had a lot of the staff members, truly believed in him just because of who he is and how he went about his business. Very ethical, very knowledgeable, and so I really learned to rely upon Chris. So, as he did his career and I did my career, we both ended up at one time as being facility leaders. And we've had an opportunity to kind of talk about, well, you went off and went that way. I went off and went this way. How did your facility leadership, experience go? So I want to turn this over to Chris, as he's got some great things he wants to talk about. So Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then let's get into this thing.
Well, hey, Pete, first and foremost, thanks for having me on. Let me just start by saying, let me just set the groundwork here. After I graduated high school, I immediately joined the United States Army, HUA. I served as an airborne infantryman and was awarded the Combat Infantryman's Badge for my combat tour and service in Iraq. Upon my honorable discharge, I worked at the Tioga County Sheriff's Department, with my main responsibility and duty being on corrections, of course, along with transport, court security. And I did that for about a year. And then I started my 30-year career with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Upon retirement, I worked a short time for a private prison company as an advisor. So I like to say I'm not just one-dimensional. I do have experience in local, federal, and private corrections. Today, I'm still very passionate about corrections, so now I enjoy writing articles and being a guest on podcasts.
All right, so what you got, Chris? What do you want to talk about?
Well, today I don't want to talk about me. I kind of want to talk about wardens, wardens in general. Why are some wardens successful and other wardens not so much? Why do some facilities run very well and others not so much? And of course, my opinion, it starts with the warden who leads it. Perhaps today I can offer some friendly advice, maybe some helpful hints to staff aspiring to become a warden or current wardens,
right,
by learning from my mistakes and even my experiences. Now, these hints apply to all wardens, but more so high security, maximum security, penitentiary, level 5 type wardens. I was a warden for 5 years, 3 of those years at a very active, a very demanding, a very challenging, and at times a very violent maximum security penitentiary.
It is a challenge, and I didn't realize how much of a challenge it was until I actually got in that seat. And if I were to compare it like to all the other pay grades that I moved up, or all the other ranks that I moved up, there's like these hidden jack in the box moments that pop up that you're just not aware of until you get there. And as much as they try to train you and get you ready for them, until you're there, it's kind of like when you first walk into prison, until the door actually shuts the first time and you realize, oh, I'm actually in here. It's kind of the same thing with the warden job. When you get there, all those things you've talked about pop up, and you're like, I am the one who's responsible. It's me, and you got to turn to your mentors and stuff if you have time. But if not, boy, the decision making better come quick, and it better come right.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because you read into the first thing I wanted to talk about. It's a little phrase that I use that helps me remember us. And I've used this phrase over and over and over. And the phrase is, when the time to perform has arrived, the time to prepare has passed. Now, let me say that again, because it's very important. When the time to perform has arrived, the time to prepare has passed. Don't rush to become a warden because of money or status. Yes, it's an admirable goal, but be prepared to assume all the responsibilities from the office of the warden. I was 49 years old with 24 years experience before I became a warden. I worked 8 different institutions, 6 different locations. I worked our headquarters. I worked highs, mediums, minimums, including complexes, medical centers, WITSEC. I was on our special operations response team and disturbance control team. I was an instructor for firearms and less lethal munitions. But more importantly, I took my time, I worked up through the ranks, and I tried to perfect each of my jobs along the way. And of course, that just doesn't happen. I heard you mention that, you should have mentors, personal and professional mentors. Don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what I need to hear. Those are the people that's been there, done it, and should guide you along the way. When I made Warden, I was fully ready, but most importantly, I was prepared. And you need to ask yourself, am I ready to manage a multi-million dollar budget? Am I ready to issue staff discipline, perhaps even staff removal? Am I ready to hold inmates accountable, including by use of force? Am I ready to be on call 24/7, so to speak? Am I truly ready to assume all the responsibilities associated with the office of the warden? In 2020, when COVID hit, if you were a warden, you had better been ready. This is not hyperbole. Staff and inmate lives literally depended on every decision I made during the unprecedented national COVID-19 pandemic. What I'm trying to say is this is the real deal. This is the real thing. It's that lives actually do depend on it. Staff and inmate. Yes.
So you've said everything so perfectly, because I know when you're an officer, like me and you start out as officers, you want your officers to come to work, be on the job from the moment they walk in to the moment they walk out. Then you want them to be with family, doing their hobbies, whatever their thing is, to get their mind away from it. And then as time goes on, you achieve these higher ranks. It's almost like there's you, the person, have accepted higher levels of responsibility and authority. So therefore, there's a little more attachment to the work. You become a shift supervisor. You're probably thinking about your shift the day before that shift comes up, at home, getting ready. How am I going to come in? What am I going to do? What are my drills? What are my things I'm going to do? And then as you move on up, eventually, in my opinion, if you're asking to be a facility leader, you have to have the mindset, I am responsible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether I have phone service or whether I'm at work or not. And you have to make that obligation, because without that, you're not going to, I don't see any way to be successful.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Warden is it's not Monday through Friday, weekends and holidays off. That phone will ring anytime there's an incident, anytime that you need to be aware of something going on within your facility. If you're packed up and getting ready to go on vacation and there was a serious incident at your facility, guess what? Sorry, hon, I'm going into work, because that's the dedication and the responsibility that I agreed to. Do I think that other staff could possibly handle any situation? I do. But sometimes situations are to a magnitude where it is going to involve the warden, and the warden needs to be on site.
You know, um, they're not calling because they want to hear your voice.
Yeah.
They're calling. And now there are some, I've had some chatty people call you, hey boss, just checking in. You're like, hey, great. But you don't want to tell them not to do that, because that's what they need. They're doing what they need. If they call you, it's because they need something, whether
That's
it is
right.
that reassuring thing, whether it is to bat an idea off you, or whether it's to say, boss, I'm overwhelmed. I've got all this stuff going on. We talked about this before, I believe. So go in and help.
Yeah, yeah,
Take
that's
some of
exactly.
that, take that stress off these people, because they're in the mix of it. But they're not calling just because they want to hear your voice. They're calling because there's a requirement to report. They're calling because they're overwhelmed. They're calling just because they want guidance. So pick up the phone and be there for them. You know,
Well, you're the facility leader. People are looking at you to make the decisions and the right decisions. And that kind of goes into my next thing here, and a phrase that I use for my one of my next friendly advice or helpful hints is: security is not convenient. Uh, do not, if you take anything away from today's podcast, do not manage from your office. there's an acronym called MBWA, managed by walking around. Literally live by this MBWA. Be a doer, not a sayer. Lift a finger, not a tongue. You must walk and talk with the staff, especially correctional officers who are in the trenches. And you need to talk with the inmates. Show them that you care. Show them that each staff member has value to the overall success of the operation. One day, go to a housing unit. The next day, go to a work site. Ride around with a perimeter officer. Ride around the perimeter with a perimeter control officer. Go to the powerhouse and talk with a powerhouse operator. Walk up inside the tower and talk to the compound tower officer. By these simple measures, you'll know the problems. You'll know what the problems are. You'll know what staff need to do their jobs. You may identify and correct any life safety needs. And I will guarantee you two things. If you do this, your staff and the inmates will appreciate it, number one. And if you don't do it, you'll have no idea what's going on inside your institution. And most likely the staff and inmates will think you don't care.
It's very important that you bring that up about walking around and talking with the staff, because most of the time, and this isn't out of meanness or anything, staff don't want you to think that there's a problem. They want you to believe in them, that they can take care of business, that they can get the job done. So you walk in, and I don't know if it's different for you, but 90 times out of 10 or 90 times out of 100, they're going to say everything's all right. But really, they're struggling or working and managing through a problem. But if you just stay there for a little bit longer, you get past that icebreaker moment, they're going to start sharing with you. Yeah.
Number one, it's a team effort. Okay. You're the warden, but it's still a team effort. Number two, most of the answers you probably don't have. Your staff do if you ask them. You have to be able to read the room. Okay. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later here, giving your staff a voice, and we'll go into that story. And next thing I want to go into is, and this is going to be the most challenging thing for a warden.
All right.
In the phrase that I use is, if it's predictable, it's preventable. Wardens must figure out a way to reduce violent incidents, which is leading to acute and chronic PTSD. I saw this saying, and it really hit home for me. Every person goes through 5 or 6 traumatic incidents in their lifetime. Correctional officers go through 800 to 900 in theirs. Wow. Very powerful, but very true. Wardens need to set clear expectations to the inmate population regarding the use of what we call prison shanks, prison-made knives, homicides, staff assaults, things of that nature. I, along with my intelligence officers, made it abundantly clear to the inmate population that if there's a homicide or an attempted homicide with knives, there will be institution ramifications, such as restriction to purchase commissary, which commissary to inmates is a very, very high priority, or even removal of commissary items. There may be a lockdown, or could be modified operations, which affects visiting, phones, emails. There could be targeted interviews, targeted shakedowns. Trust me, the inmate population will talk among themselves, the different geographical cars, the gangs, the groups, and decide if it's important for them to comply. I've done it. It works. I reduced violent traumatic incidents by half, which reduced, chronic acute PTSD incidents on the staff and the inmates. This may sound weird to some, but wardens will understand. One of my yearly evaluations, I had no suicides, no walkaways, and no homicides at a United States penitentiary. It didn't just happen. It took hard work, it took setting clear expectations and communication with the inmate population. Now, I will say, you will receive resistance. Family members will not understand. Stakeholders will not understand. The master inmate manipulators will say, you are punishing everyone when the incident involved a few inmates. My response: first, I would say this is not punishment, this is prison management. This is institution order and control. This is safety and security, which is paramount. Second, I would say, although I don't condone, I fully understand prison politics, and this does not involve a few inmates. This incident could involve 50, 100, 200 inmates. Who stole the material for the knife? Who made the knife? Who sold the knife? Who ordered the hit? Who were the lookouts? Who distracted the officer? How many shot callers approved the hit? Third, because I had these discussions with these inmates when I did it, I would say, because I care. Look at the alternative. I don't care and do nothing. One thing for sure I can say after 30 years experience in corrections, although inmates will not admit this unless they're one-on-one with you, all inmates want safety, control, and order, period, end of story.
Those are great points. And I want to go back on a couple of them, if you don't mind. So you talked about, you set these things in motion. You're the new facility leader, you show up. The facility is the facility when you inherit it. It has its, like you said, it has its prison culture with the detainee, or the inmates or detainees has a prison culture with the staff. Here you show up, you're surveying everything. You're probably looking at previous incidents over the last 2 or 3 years, kind of find out where they're at. You're doing your research and you decide, okay, this is the path I'm going to take. How did you go about making sure that your staff understood the expectations?
Well, you're kind of getting ahead of me a little bit, even in my next thing, because another thing I want to point out, or one of my other phrases, one of my other friendly advice, my hints, was a way, not the way. What does that mean? It means there's more than one way of doing things. To answer your question, one thing wardens should not do is rush in and change everything. Doing so only creates confusion. Everyone knows you're the warden. So sit back for a period of time, 1 month, 2 months, and just observe how things are done. Respect the culture. Respect the institution history, like you said. If it works, leave it alone. If it's broke, fix it. Even if it's not how you would do it, don't try to change it. As wardens, you get the final say, but listen to your staff. Allow them to have a voice. We talked about that earlier, because quite frankly, they have most of the answers. Trust me, this will go a long way with morale, and not to mention it facilitates the next generation of leaders. And wardens, you need to continue to study leadership for themselves. Just because you're a warden does not mean that you cannot be a better leader. If you're a know-it-all with a massive ego, your staff will pick up on it, and you might be a great leader, but only inside your own head.
When you talk to going back to your initial comments about walking and talking with staff, that's that opportunity for you to talk to them and see, are they getting the same message? Because warden, you can't be there 24 hours a day, it's on your mind, but you can't be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all holidays. You just can't. You have to get that leadership team talking your message, and your way to find out, did the message get translated and in the ears and understood the way I needed it to, is by that walking and talking. If you don't do that, you'll never know if they're on the same page as you. It'll also give you the indicator of those who aren't on the same page, and you can go through that process to determine, Are they going to be on, the McConnell bus, or are they going to be on some different bus that you might have to, take a look at how you manage that. And another thing was you talked about, if you turn a blind eye to it, or if you're like, well, that's just the way this prison is, or those darn inmates did that today, well, that's too bad. Failure to respond to it in any way whatsoever, that gives them the indication that that's your level, that's your threshold. They're trying things out. They're saying, how far before I tip it over? How far can we go before it's too much for this person? In every one of those instances, they're evaluating you on that. They're evaluating to determine what's going to be the threshold of things that we can get away with.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing, and that's another reason why you walk and talk, because say I do make some decision as the warden, I listen to my team, I make the final decision, I make some decision. Maybe I had a violent incident at my facility. Maybe it involved a homicide. Maybe the clear expectations that I set forth, I acted on them. And inmates don't like it. Well, that's why I walk and talk, because I don't expect my staff to field all those questions. I made the decision. I'm going to field those questions. And trust me, I've had hundreds of inmates that would talk to me about some of the decisions I made, especially if it was over a violent incident. And I used to say all the time, of course, the inmates think they would say, well, the two people that did this, or the three people that did this, they're being punished. Oh, no, 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 no. It doesn't work that way. I say, what happens in football when someone jumps off sides? The entire team moves back 5 yards. It's not just one person.
That's good.
What happened in Los Angeles when the city experienced many days of protest and unrest? The mayor set a curfew that involved everyone, not just the people that were in the protest and doing property damage. What happened when several retailers experienced widespread theft and organized retail crime? They closed their stores, affected everybody. What happens when one passenger is disruptive on an aircraft? Plane lands at the nearest airport. We don't throw him off the plane, not mid-flight.
Yeah.
What happens when a Category 5 hurricane is heading toward a particular area? Even if it doesn't hit that area, it's a mandatory evacuation, involves everyone. So I know these are all rhetorical questions, as these decisions affect everyone, not just the people directly involved. You know what I say? That's called life. That's called life.
And I think what helped me best was knowing that I had to walk and talk to the inmate population in times when these things weren't happening, as well as, and then overemphasize, over communicate the times that they did happen. They build confidence in you.
Yes, yes. And I do have one more piece of advice, I guess, I'd like to talk about. It's kind of a training concept. It's pay now or pay later.
Yeah.
What is training? It's recent, relevant, realistic, and ongoing. What does it prevent? Injuries, death, lawsuits, community distrust, things of that nature. So one thing's to maintain institution order, wardens, and especially at high security institutions, must hold staff and inmates accountable with addressing misconduct and discipline. People have heard the thin blue line. In corrections, it's a thin silver line. What is the thin silver line? A thin line of officers that prevents population from descending into chaos. Order and discipline keeps society from chaos, and a correctional facility is no different. This also includes like enforcing the institutional rules and regulations at times by the use of force. So I tell wardens, if you're not familiar with your agency's use of force policy from front to back, you're wrong. A warden must be able to approve a use of force and have the confidence the use of force team is adequately trained and equipped to perform the duty.
Out of control.
I probably
And that's where I really, when you brought it up, I'm so glad we talked about that. That walking and talking with your staff is so important because it gives you that opportunity for reinforcement. Was the message going out right? Establish that, that rapport with your staff as well as with the inmates, so that they know you're a person who, does their job. You're going around and doing what you're supposed to do. Um, if you don't mind, I want to pay a little more. I want to pay some attention to that, because you have to get to the point like you talked about with your wife, and you're explaining, hey, I work at a prison, I do these things, and then as your journey continues, those responsibilities come a little more. How did you work with your family to be successful in them understanding sometimes on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or Thanksgiving, dad has to take a phone call?
Well, again, with her working in the medical field, I mean, prison is 24/7, 365. Along medical, working in a hospital is 24/7, 365. So she already knew that there was going to be times where you had to work on a holiday or at night or extra hours or on the weekend or whatever. She completely understood that. So that really wasn't an issue for me. Uh, being that prisons are unpredictable,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you don't know what's going to happen that day or that weekend when you're not working, you get called in.
Right.
She understood things were going to happen, and it's going to require your attention. Um, but one thing I will say too, and it's a good point. I think work and family need to be equally balanced, or they both suffer. So I think you need to put just as much effort into your family as you do your work. It's kind of a 50-50 thing. And if you don't, they both suffer. And that's highly important to all staff, not just wardens, but to all staff.
Balance. That's true. As a facility leader, did you find yourself making sure that you were keeping your staff invigorated as far as knowing what was going on and making sure they were doing those types of activities?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. I just did there was a exercise that I saw on Facebook, and it was basically, what piece of advice could you give like a new employee coming in, working for a correctional facility? And my advice was you need to have another outlet other than, prison inmates 24/7. Whether that outlet is off duty, like you said, I lift weights, I go fishing, I travel, whatever the case may, I like to cook, whatever. Even if you're at work, have a different outlet, become involved, take full advantage of what the agency, your particular agency has to offer. Perhaps it's a member on a crisis management team or a instructor for CPR or recruiter that helps recruiting good staff into your
Mm-hmm.
agency. Have an additional outlet other than just prison corrections inmates 24/7. Very
Right.
important. It's like you said, that work balance, that work family life balance.
It's hard for me. I married, my wife was prisons. So we would come home and share our day. you know, and then before you know it, it's 9 o'clock at night, kids are in bed, and we're still talking about our day. And we had to go about making a point of, you got 30 minutes, I got 30 minutes, but by the time dinner's on, we ain't talking about prisons no more.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't that easy to do at times, but you had to make that commitment to it. And I really try to encourage our newer employees that when they come in, keep those other elements about yourself going. Find a way. If you can't be involved in after hours, like at school after hour events with kids, maybe they got stuff that do fit into your schedule. Maybe you can go
Mhm.
help out during the daytime. If you're working in the night shift, you can go help out before you go to work a couple hours, putting lines on the field or doing the Dewey Decimal System in the library, if they even do that anymore. I don't know. But find different ways to do that. Find like people would say, I don't know where to go fishing. I'm new here. I'll help you find a lake. There's got to be a
Yeah,
lake, a pond, or a Bass Pro Shop somebody where you can drop a hook in the water. Got to be
yeah,
something,
yeah.
you know.
It's funny.
And it's just, that I think that are the parts of facility leader when you talked about what makes people successful versus what doesn't. I believe it's accepting that you have all those responsibilities. One of the classic things that was said to me, and I try to live up to it, keyword try, is that as a facility leader, we assume more responsibility. Don't focus on privileges. If you're promoting, because like you said earlier, you want the parking spot, you want the cell phone, you want the laptop, you want the shiny name tag, you want to be able to pick and choose when you do and what you do, you're not going to be successful. You may be successful up here, but that facility is not going to be successful.
That's right. And again, that's what I said. Why are some wardens successful? Why are some wardens not successful? Why are some institutions running very well, others not so much? And I think what we discussed today is some of the reasons why. So, I want all wardens to remember and commit and live by these five phrases that we went over. And when the time to perform has arrived, the time to prepare has passed. Don't rush becoming a warden. Don't look for, putting that picture up on the wall. Enjoy your career and perfect your career along the way, and be completely and totally prepared. Security is not convenient. And we talked about, you know, um, manage by walking around. Get out of the office, man. Walk around your facility. Walk and talk with the staff and the inmates. They'll appreciate it. You'll be engaged. They'll know you care. Uh, they'll tell you what you need to know, especially if you are the type of person that's about action
Oh yeah,
and not words.
yeah.
If it's predictable, it's preventable. They have to find ways to reduce, especially at higher security prisons. You have to find ways to reduce these violent incidents, because it is affecting the staff and the inmates, uh, especially after retirement. It's just those incidents over and over. A person goes through 5 or 6 traumatic incidents in their lifetime, and a correctional officer goes 8 to 900.
Yeah.
How do you process that? That's
Right.
that's not acceptable. That we need to reduce that. It's
Yeah.
just completely not acceptable. And we talked about the training concept, pay now or pay later. Recent, relevant, realistic, and ongoing training to help with injuries and deaths and lawsuits, and build community trust, not community distrust. Having that effective training program, all way and not the way. There's many ways to do things. If it works, leave it alone. If it needs to be fixed, then you fix it. Again, even if it's not the way you would do it, respect the culture, respect the institution history, the things of that nature. Allow your staff to provide input. It'll go a long ways, especially with just with morale alone, and morale can kill an institution.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like to say, to all wardens out there, you have an incredibly important job with, the ultimate responsibility. Yet at times it may seem thankless. And the position of a warden is a hard job. It's lonely at the top.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot fraternize with institutional staff. A warden must be able to rely on oneself for knowing they continue to make the right decisions. Their facility is clean, it's safe, it's secure. Life safety issues are addressed. They have a staff wellness program, security, training, budget, discipline, misconduct, infrastructure, the list goes on.
Right.
In our case, well done is better than well said.
Yeah.
So let me say, on behalf of all correctional professionals, thank you, wardens, for what you do.
Absolutely. And thank you to the correctional staff who take on these shifts and are there when the warden is not, who are building a career, whether it's to stay at a facility and maintain their position and provide for their families, or it's those who decide, you know what, I want a little more responsibility. I want to see what I can do. Can I be that facility leader? That example of what I'm saying, because success breeds success. And we know that and I can tell you the examples that you've given today, knowing you and knowing the way that you would have managed a facility, I would have loved to have been an employee working for Chris McConnell at any facility. And I really am glad that we had this conversation, because I think we hit some key points. And I know that as we continue our conversations, we'll just keep building and building on this. And I really look forward to the following conversations with you, Chris. Do you have any final comments?
Yeah, my final comment is, thank you, Pete, for hosting Corrections Unfiltered, where corrections, meets conversation. It's been an honor and a fun experience being a guest on 2 of your podcasts. So thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate it, Chris. All right. Thank you, buddy.
Yes, sir.